the line and reap the rewards of all our hard work.
It's 7:02.
News Talk weather.
Thanks to Ryanair. Flying you to over 200 destinations is our business. What you do there is yours.
Dry tonight in most areas apart from the odd light shower. Some mister fog patches are possible too, with lows of 7 to 11 degrees. Now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Newsround on Off the Ball.
With Gillette, for an effortless finish to your day. New Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
This is News Talk.
Welcome along to Wednesday's Off the Ball. We've got a really good show between now and 10 p.m. in the football show. Harry Pryor is going to join us to take a look at Liverpool, bailed out a little bit by Matip's late winner in the Champions League against Ajax last night. They now go into what's effectively a 3-week break because their game against Chelsea is off this weekend. We'll be keeping an eye on the Champions League throughout the evening as well. Graham Potter's first game in charge of Chelsea. Man City in action against Dortmund. That is a return to Dortmund for Erling Haaland. And Celtic in action at the moment against Shakhtar Donetsk. We'll be talking to Dan the Man Shanahan, the Waterford hurling legend, who has called time on his club career. Remarkably, he played for 30 seasons as a senior with Lismore. He has decided to step away and is now likely to go in with the Laois senior hurling management for next season. And we will be talking Wednesday night rugby with Liam Toland and Rory O'Connor, including that 35-man emerging Ireland squad, which will be travelling to South Africa, and potentially a role at number 10 across that tour for Ciaran Frawley. So all that to look forward to between now and 10. Delighted to say we're joined by Richie McCormack. Richie, how are you getting on?
Evening, gents.
Mick McCarthy's here with me as well. How are you, Mick?
Hey, Will. Hey, Richie.
Looking forward to talking to Dan the Man. You said to me before we come in, when we lined Dan up, that you wanted to talk about a moment of shithousery in a sporting context from Dan.
Unparalleled, I would say, in the game of hurling. So I'm not sure if it was what year did Clare and Limerick meet in the league final and then straight away in the Munster Championship a couple of weeks later? I think it was 17, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, Davies last year at Clare.
Yeah.
Right.
No, it was 16, wasn't it?
16, yeah, okay, so it was probably 2016 then, right? And Dan Shanahan's the selector on the Waterford team. This is the championship game. I'd been in Thurles.
Your beloved Clare.
2 out of 3 weeks in a row, yeah, as a Clare fan. 2 out of 3 weeks. So they played league final, then first round of the championship. Very similar seats in Thurles. Low. I don't usually sit so low at the stand. Actually, I usually go to the terrace, but sitting low and stand quite close to the sideline, where Dan is standing on the sideline, if not sometimes on the pitch, wearing the blue shorts of Waterford, wearing a nondescript tight kind of like black top with very little sleeves and a yellow bib, and he was wearing a black cap backwards. So if I was to look at him from maybe 85 yards away, maybe that's the distance where the Clare goalkeeper was, and I was to look down the field and I seen a man with a black helmet-like device,
you're going to claim
a
Clare player on the pitch,
a yellow bib and blue shorts, what would I think? I think that there's probably a Clare man free on the sideline there.
The Clare wing forward is ready to catch the ball.
I would say 4 balls went over the sideline from the Clare puck out at varying points of the game. They weren't like always following him, but he was very clever about when he came out for it as well. At one point I saw him walk, you know the way they kind of turn after a puck out was the sideline, he kind of walked back to the bench with a smirk on his face. At the time I was quite angry. As I said, I was close enough to be like shouting at the linesman to have a brain and figure this bloody thing out, you idiot. Now I look back at it with such joy, Will, at like just what that, like, what else is a selector for? Yeah. But like completely just confound the opposition with just. By the way, I watched every Waterford game that year. I think it might have been 17 because they got to the All Ireland. I'm not sure, yeah. But obviously I watched every Waterford game that year anyway. Afterwards, he never wore yellow again. I think it was always a red bib after that.
It's usually a kind of an orangey colour.
Yeah.
But is that not up on the officials to actually pick up on? I can't believe they didn't.
Of course it is, but like, I'm sorry, not to besmirch GA officialdom, but it didn't surprise me they didn't pick up on it. That's all I'll say.
It's very clever. I mean,
it's incredibly clever.
Where to find a yellow bib, first of all? Because they're all like you wouldn't get away with it.
It was bright yellow. It was bright yellow. He's basically wearing a Clare kit. Oh. Yeah. Again, from far away. But even the black helmet and backwards, or the black hat and backwards, like that kind of looks like a helmet then, you know?
I'm sure Dan will defend
Marginal
himself.
gains, Mick. Marginal gains.
Oh, look, Richie, it's years on. I look back on this with nothing but admiration and respect, you know?
I'm sure Dan...
And still a little bit of anger at the linesman.
Oh, of course. Well, you've always got simmering anger, Mick. I think we can say that. But is this the kind of tactic that's going to get Laois back into the what you call it, the Leinster Hurling Championship, William?
I think they should get back into the Leinster Hurling Championship anyway. I think they'll be
there's some awfully Yarraism.
Yeah, it is a year, isn't it? They'll be the strong favourites, I think, to win the Joe McDonagh next year. If they can get everyone hurling, that is the problem that Laois are going to face. I think there's a lot of their players who are already talking about going into retirement ahead of next season. I don't know if Paddy Purcell's going to go back in with the team. I don't know what's going to happen with Roddy King. They're the type of players that Laois are going to need if they want to get out of the Joe McDonagh. But to me, on the face of it, this looks like a pretty good management team. Willie Maher going in as manager on the back of winning a couple of Dublin titles with Coola. He's with Bennett's Bridge at the moment. He's managing them alongside Dan Shanahan, and Dan would have been a selector alongside, well, Maher would have been a selector as part of Derek McGrath's management team with him as well. So given that they've worked together before, it seems almost the perfect management team. It's just Laois left it really, really late to actually make an appointment, because Cheddar Plunkett effectively walked the week after they were knocked out of the Leinster Championship, so they had over 100 days to make the appointment. And I get the feeling they went to a few different potential candidates before deciding on Willie Maher as the man to take over. But by all reports, like I listened to Derek McGrath yesterday on OTB AM, it seems that Dan Shanahan's a really good coach. Yeah,
Look, and I've heard that before, and I've heard it from Derek yesterday and before, and from the Waterford players that were in there. So yeah, look, I mean, I think that it's a great appointment for Laois if it does come off. Be interested to see that. Like, John McDonagh gets better every year, to be honest, but I know what you're saying, and look, I mean, we're not going to get into this. Like, there's no point in having a big long conversation at this time of year about Laois hurling at the start of the show, but I don't know if it's as automatic. I know what you're saying, that things have to go right, but even if they do, it was such a slide last year. I'm feeling that John McDonagh is going to get harder and harder to get out of, and if you're coming in there with the negative momentum of what was a horrific season last year, like, I mean, back to the old days of Laois, really, wasn't it? I think it's going to be, I just think it's an uphill task. I would not be backing them, let's say, if I was to have to pick one of the 5 teams next year.
I think history tends to tell that the team that goes down comes back up.
I know, but I just
Maybe this
again,
year
I just think
ends.
that it was such a bad year for Laois, and I just feel like it seems to be getting to be more and more of a competitive championship. I think it's a couple of years behind because of between COVID and adding that extra team to Leinster. I think has kind of hurt it in some ways, but I think again, that's sort of regrouping now, you know.
I thought Kerry looked pretty good, and they put in a decent performance against Antrim in the final. That's the one to watch out for, is that Kerry for the last 3 years have been that close and not quite getting up. That maybe this is the year, maybe now that Stephen Malumphey's had a season with them, that now that might be the year they kick on.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I know you don't want to talk them up too much, but I do think that Offaly have it in them to improve an awful lot over, like, I think they can seriously improve on 12 months on from what they did last year. You know, I think they underachieved last year, but also I think they're an improving team as well. So you add those two things together, you go to your right level of achievement plus improvement.
I think they've got their best player before we get onto tonight's ball back in Oisin Kelly for next season, which they need. And then after that, I think the under 20 Offaly team are the one to watch for next year, because Leo O'Connor has gone with the minors as the under 20 manager for next season, and obviously I think he feels that quite a few of the players coming off that 17s team are going to be decent. So I think just see what happens with Offaly in the next 3 or 4 seasons. I wouldn't put too much pressure on next year. Richie, what's happening with tonight's ball so far?
Lots of it already underway, of course. And Shamrock Rovers facing a first-round exit from the UEFA Youth League. They lost this evening's first leg by 5-0 in the Netherlands to AZ. The second leg takes place in just under 3 weeks' time. They're well into the second half now, just coming up on 20 minutes to go in Warsaw in Group F of the Champions League. It's Shakhtar Donetsk 1, Celtic 1. The other game in the group kicks off at 8 and sees reigning champions Real Madrid play host to RB Leipzig. Erling Haaland does start against his former side tonight as Manchester City entertain Borussia Dortmund in Group G. An interesting looking back four for City tonight. Ederson starts in goal, of course. At right back tonight is John Stones. He's got to the left of him Manuel Akanji, Nathan Aki, and over on the far side of the pitch, Joao Cancelo. In midfield, slightly more standard there, Rodri, Kevin De Bruyne and Ilkay Gundogan. And in support of Haaland, Riyad Mahrez and Jack Grealish. The other game in that group sees Copenhagen play host to Sevilla. New manager Graham Potter even has restored Thiago Silva, Marc Cucurella and Jorginho to the Chelsea starting 11 for their Group E game with Salzburg. Interestingly, he's reverted to a back four with Kepa Arrizabalaga starting in goal in place of the absent Edouard Mendy. It's Reece James, Cesar Azpilicueta, Thiago Silva and Marc Cucurella across the back four. Jorginho and Mateo Kovacic sit in midfield. In front of them, the trio of Mason Mount, Kai Havertz and Raheem Sterling. And Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is the man up top. There was a 5:45 start in the group's other game. AC Milan currently 2-1 up at home to Dinamo Zagreb. It was former Chelsea man Olivier Giroud who opened the scoring there through a penalty. And Rangers are seeking their first points in Group A tonight as they welcome Napoli to Ibrox. Tonight's other action is in Group H with Juventus at home to Benfica and Maccabi Haifa hosting Paris Saint-Germain.
Yeah, and of course, the Newsround brought to you by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. That Chelsea team is interesting, Mick, in that a few things. They've gone from a back five to a back four.
Yeah.
I was wondering what was going to happen with Cucurella, because there was this very unusual situation where Cucurella went one way and left Graham Potter and Brighton, and then you had the situation where Brighton signed Billy Gilmore and he left literally just before Graham Potter ended up coming in, and they were talking about Graham Potter being a major reason for him to actually go to Brighton and Hove Albion. In this case, I wonder how awkward the conversation between Cucurella and Potter was.
I don't know. Like, I mean, the falling out over Cucurella seems to be between the clubs rather than, I think, the manager. And I think I think it's a bigger issue for Billy Gilmore than it is for the other three people in this scenario. I think Potter and Cucurella would be delighted to be reunited in this regard. Like, I mean, it's not as if when you move, it's not like moving sideways. I think when you move to a big club, I think there's an automatic assumption. Of course, Cucurella was going to go to Chelsea when the money came in. So I wouldn't worry about that at all. I'm interested to see the shape of that team. I'm interested to see how Aubameyang fits in. It's like, it's great though, isn't it? Because it is great that Chelsea have done this, because they weren't the team. I've been fascinated by Man City this year. I've been fascinated by Liverpool not performing at their best. I've been fascinated by Arsenal. Chelsea not really paying too much attention to. They go and sack their manager, and now it's like right, really looking forward to this Chelsea game. It's like they know what they're doing. These whoever writes the script for the English Premier League / Champions League teams.
Aubameyang is the man I felt sorry for. He had the whole interview. He says, "I'm looking forward to getting back with Tommy T."
Don't ever feel sorry for Aubameyang.
59 minutes, Richie, he got with him in the end.
Don't ever feel. Have you not seen that Arsenal Riveted or whatever it was, All or Nothing documentary? There's no sorry to be had for Pierre Aubameyang and his translucent cars. Like he's grand, Will. He's going to be okay.
He's a fine collection of translucent cars, I would say.
What's the problem with that though? That's just like he doesn't seem like a bad guy. He just likes a bit of flash and stuff like that. As a Bows fan, Richie, I would say you understand that kind of stuff, Flash for the sake of flash.
I've no time for a flash Harry, a sunshine boy, as John Giles might call him. Yeah. Need to graft.
I think his very first appearance in it, he turns up in like an all gold tracksuit.
Yeah.
In the car park for the first day of pre-season.
I think he's wearing a lot of gold. He's got gold through his hair as well, which sets the scene perfectly for the 2 episodes that follow after that. Did you watch the full doc?
I haven't. Do you know what? I was thinking about this last night. I am going to watch it. I keep dipping in, but I'm only a couple of episodes into it. And I was thinking about this yesterday when I was reading about the Magic Johnson documentary coming out, and I was thinking, that's a
docu-series.
I know, but as is, I suppose, as is the Arsenal thing, yeah. But I was just thinking about that. I was like, I'm so much more interested in the story of the past than a kind of a moment in time from now, because it's the full story, and it is, and not only is it the full story, but it's so much more honest because of it. Yeah. And I was just thinking about this. I will watch the All or Nothings. I did like the Tottenham one. I think the Arsenal one has been okay so far, but it just doesn't feel essential in the way that maybe, obviously, the Jordan one was probably the best ever, but some of those great ones of the past are. I
think having Mourinho helped with the Spurs one as well.
Massively.
Just the natural narrative that kind of happened because of the switch managers at the end of episode 1. I agree with you though. I finally got around to watching the Neymar documentary last night, and I was so annoyed watching it.
Oh, I wouldn't even try it, especially when you're so flooded with that.
It came up on recommended things, Richie. It wasn't something I actually sought out, but it was one of those where I hadn't seen it and thought, right, I'll have a look. And the killer is that you get to points like when Neymar decided he wanted to leave PSG in 2019 and Barcelona put the bid in, and there's a bit of that in the background, and it basically gets about 2.5 minutes of coverage, and then they just brush it over entirely. You can tell it's made by Neymar's production company, and it's all about making Neymar look as good as possible, so the fans are being blamed at PSG. I would like to have heard some introspective conversation from Neymar saying, I shouldn't have done this, or why did I do it? No, it was just literally done.
Whereas like the Maradona or even the Pele docs have a little bit, like Pele unbelievably involved in his own thing and it completely compromised it. But you still got loads of cool stuff in it. Yeah. Because ultimately, what is Pele protecting anymore? Whereas like Neymar it's a advertising vehicle. And like, I mean, I saw when I was flicking through the other day again, because you're just absolutely flooded with sports docs at the moment on all the streaming sites. But that Pogmentary thing is like, we've been meaning to talk about how bad it is on the show for a while, but it's almost like I refuse. It's like point blank refuse to even watch a minute of it, so I can even have a discussion on how bad it is.
If I can give credit to Manchester United for anything, fair play to them for announcing Pogba's departure before he got to do it on his documentary. I think that was the plan, is that he wanted to announce it online.
That he was even leaving United on that.
Yeah, he wanted to basically announce his move to Juventus in one of the episodes. So United got in ahead of that. Richie, Arsenal's Europa League game, which was due to be played against PSV, has been rescheduled.
Yeah, and it's not as if it solves any real fixture congestion for them either. Their postponed Europa League game with PSV Eindhoven refixed for October 20th. As a result of that, their scheduled Premier League meeting with Manchester City for October 19th has in turn been postponed. No date forthcoming, as you might imagine, for that one just yet.
Yeah, never ending. Now, tell us about this emerging Ireland squad. We'll be talking about this on Wednesday Night Rugby in a bit more detail with Liam Tolan and Rory O'Connor, but we know the identity of the 35 players who'll be travelling to South Africa now.
Yeah, and only 4 of them have prior full international experience named in that emerging Ireland squad to tour South Africa. Robert Balakoon, Quaylen Blade, Shane Day and Max Deegan are among the 35-man squad that will work under Simon Easterby. Also included is Munster's French-born recent signing Antoine Frisch and the recent Sevens player Andrew Smith. Emerging Ireland's tour begins against the Windhoek Draft Griquas in Bloemfontein on the 30th of this month. Easterby says the excursion will provide the perfect opportunity for Ciaran Frawley to stake his claim to be Jonathan Sexton's long-term successor.
I think there has to be a degree of flexibility, but we feel Frawley has the potential to lead in a number of different positions. Obviously, he's played 12 a fair bit for Leinster, but we see him, which he did in the Maori weeks, as being a guy that can lead from the front at 10. Lead a week. He'll be asked in the next few weeks to do a slightly different role to what he was doing in New Zealand, because he had a lot of senior players around him. We feel like he has the ability to step up and front the week, lead the week, as someone like the extreme Johnny Sexton does week in, week out, and has done that for a number of years. So giving those players like Frawley the opportunity to put himself at the forefront of a week, lead it, and take the team to a performance on a weekend in that position at 10 is crucial for us. We're still finding a little bit about Frawley and the way he can play. You can see that when they're playing in the URC and they're playing for their provinces, but it is slightly different. And there's not a huge difference, but it is different when you have them in your environment across a couple of week period. And hopefully we can benefit from that time, and Frawley can benefit from that time with us when he goes back into Leinster after this trip.
Mick, what do you make of this? Obviously, there had to be a certain amount of negotiation between the provinces and the IRFU about who'd be released. I mean, I'm sure Ulster would much prefer to have Doak and Balakoon and some players who could have been quite important for them over the next few weeks. On the other hand, you're a year out from the World Cup, and this is an opportunity to maybe spread the net a bit.
Yeah, I think ultimately the IRFU are going to be the ones making these decisions at the end of the day, aren't they? Like, for all the independence that might be there. I think for Ciaran Frawley, it's brilliant, because I think if Andy Farrell does see him as the option at 10 that he wants to explore, we just know that he's not going to get that opportunity at Leinster, whereas he will here. But again, what games are going to be missed for this? I presume it's a URC windows, and like Leinster kind of need Ciaran Frawley at that time. They might not play him enough at 10, but like
I would assume
he's a big part of their. I'd say in terms of appearances in the URC, he's well up there with any other player that they have.
Yeah,
and obviously the same with the other provinces. I'm just using that as an example.
I'm thinking between now and November, how much rugby will Johnny Sexton, Gary Ringrose, Robbie Henshaw play for Leinster? If you take the Frawley can play across 10, 12, 13, you would think he would have played a lot of rugby. On the other hand, as we heard from Simon Easterby, this is about looking at him at 10. Maybe he did enough against the Maori to think who's the guy to look at.
And I think most Irish rugby fans will understand that if that is something that we want to see more of, and that is an option and does have the potential to be a Johnny Sexton type player, not necessarily the second best out half we have, but a Johnny Sexton type that doesn't mess up the game plan when he comes into the game, then I think that's what we have to do. That's fine. I just, the question is, we were talking yesterday about the URC's return, and there's the soft start, let's say, and how it's hard to take the return of a league seriously when we're looking at pictures of half the province's teams at a wedding in France.
Yeah, probably going to see more stars of Peter Manning's wedding than this weekend.
No, do you know what I mean? And it's fine. It's completely understandable, and there's no easy solution. But at the same time, one thing I did say was that it doesn't mean that the clubs don't take these games seriously. They understand what they have and who they're able to play, but they still want to win these games, and the league is still a very, very important thing. And it's not nothing to take these players away, and we should, just because maybe we don't really care, in a way, because you expect Leinster to top the URC and you expect the Irish teams to qualify for Europe,
but it's not
and
the
possibly
paradox
get
of
into
this,
the knockout stages. It's still important that they're able to have at least. Again, they're used to missing their frontline internationals. Now they're going to miss.
You see, that's the thing. While the frontline players are away, the vast majority, there are some kind of, like, say, the Sevens guys who have been brought along, and this is about maybe seeing where they're at 15s and so on, and a lot of the under 20s from the last 2 seasons about trying them out. But a lot of these guys would have played substantial rugby in the URC over the next 4 weeks. Yeah. It weakens the provinces over the next while.
Yeah, without doubt.
Anyway, Richie, Monaghan still don't have a manager.
No, they don't, but they're getting closer, it seems. Former Monaghan defender Vinnie Corey is the latest name in the frame to succeed Seamus McEnany as their senior football manager. The process of replacing Banty has proved a tricky one, with ex-Dublin All-Ireland winners Jason Sherlock and Ger Brennan both withdrawing from the race while appearing close to the job. The Independents say Monaghan hope to have a new boss in place within 10 days' time, and Corey was part of McEnany's backroom team last year, having retired as a player in 2019.
Kevin McSay also held his first media briefing, I think we'll call it, after being appointed as the boss in the West.
Yeah, he's called for patience as he settles into his new role as Mayo senior football manager. He was handed a 4-year term to succeed James Horan, of course, and he'll be assisted by Stephen Rochford, Tony Buckley and Liam McHale. McStay told Midwest Radio that he is a better manager now than when he applied for the job back in 2014. And while he says there's plenty of legs still left in the current panel, he stressed the importance of building a deep squad.
The conditioning of these players is so advanced now that I don't even put an age on them. Like, I just see who performed well for Mayo in 2022. Could he be a part of 2023? That's my yardstick, and I know that's the way the lads think the same. And we have to build a panel. We have to build a bench that makes big impacts. So they're the challenges we're looking at. And we're going to need as many as possible on board. But these are discussions we'll be having along the way. But no, I think players' best move now is play your club championships, give it everything you have, and impress us. Show us that you're still out there working hard at your game, and you're still at a high standard. I think that'll be a great starting off point.
Yeah, no great surprise in what Kevin McStay has said there, Mick. It's about setting standards, it's about hitting the ground running now. And I think probably most people got a good look at that management team, where there's about 4 or 5 guys with inter-county management experience who are part of the backroom team.
It's an unbelievable team. You got like a local living legend who's worked with McStay for so long, and McHale, and he's probably the least experienced of the main guys. If you look at with Rochford and Buckley, But it's funny. Did you see the kind of sheet going around yesterday when it was like and you're counted the names, you're thinking, God, it's pretty big, isn't it? There's like 13 names on this or something like that, and then you read to the bottom and it says, here's a load of appointments that will be made in the future, and you're like, Jesus. And by the way, that's not a dig at Mayo, because almost all of the top level setups are like this now. I remember starting years ago when you were talking about Dublin, their 20-man backroom team, like laughing about it, and it's like standard now.
I remember the Tipperary hurling management team in 2019 got a picture in Croke Park, and it was bigger than the playing pattern.
Yeah,
that's just the reality of, and like that's the Cold War as well.
There's just so much money in that as well, and like I'm not to say that every job that's done there isn't done well, but I do think there's a question as to having that many people involved. Is that taking resources away from somewhere else, and is that right? We can talk about the split season, and this is a conversation for another day. I completely accept that.
It's a much wider debate.
We can talk about the split season
and
we can talk, but that's what I'm saying. But we can talk about the move away from kind of like county dominance. But I think we're probably better off moving away from county, be all end all. Like, we have to an arms race almost for the best preparation. I think if we put limits on that, then is everybody in the same boat, and are we still okay? It's a question for another day, I think.
There you go, 53106. If you've got an opinion on what Mick has just thrown out there. Let's finish off on what seems like a story every single week, Richie. Rory versus Live Golf.
Yeah, he's reiterated his belief that live golf players should not be considered for next year's Ryder Cup. He's at the venue for that tournament, the Marco Simone Golf Club in Rome, for this week's Italian Open. McIlroy finished tied for second at last week's BMW PGA Championship and says the presence of 18 live conscripts there gave him extra motivation at Wentworth.
In a way, I mean, the leaderboard at Wentworth last week at about 2 p.m. on Sunday was looking pretty grim if you were in a position that I hold. And that certainly gave me a bit of extra motivation, and probably a few of the other guys on the leaderboard to get past that 14 under mark. But yeah, you know, it's a weird time in golf, and you know, hopefully over the next couple of years we can resolve it in some sort of way. But right now it's you know, look, I'm a golfer. I play golf. I, you know, maybe put myself in the conversation too much at times, and you know, I can't help myself because I feel strongly about it. But it's up to the powers that be to try to come to some sort of not resolution. I don't think that's the right word, but a strategy going forward so that the game can thrive at the highest level.
Rory McIlroy there speaking ahead of the Italian Open, which is at the scene of next year's Ryder Cup as well. Richie, thanks a million.
Nice lads.
And Mick as well. That is the Newsround. We'll be talking to Dan Shanahan in a few minutes' time.
The Newsround on Off the Ball.
With Gillette, for an effortless finish to your day. New Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
The Dell Technologies Forum returns this year to Dublin's Convention Centre on Tuesday the 27th of September, with speakers including Cambridge Analytica whistleblower Chris Wiley, plus breakout sessions on everything from cyber to AI, one-to-one discussions with Dell technologists and more. Discover how your business can use technology to accelerate the pace of digital transformation in 2022 and beyond. An unmissable event for business leaders. Register to attend now at www.dell.ie.
There's a name you may not know behind